If you live here in the North Country, you may have visited Sackett's Harbor. But are you aware of the rich military history connected to the village? If not, lean in. This history lesson is for you.
Historic Sackett's Harbor, a small village on the border of the U.S. and Canada on Lake Ontario, was significantly involved in the War of 1812. The presence of soldiers there was key to the creation of Madison Barracks, housing for soldiers, and eventually led to the establishment of what is now Fort Drum. Augustus Sackett, in whose honor the village is named, founded the village in 1801 as a potential trade site with Canada. But his little village on the harbor soon became the center for military activity during the War of 1812 instead. Sackett was a lawyer and hailed from New York City. He was also an entrepreneur and land developer. Like so many others at the time, Sackett saw the potential of developing land in northern New York. After seeing the area, he and his business partners bought several parcels and began selling them off. Sackett built his house there, which still stands today as the Visitor Center. The founder eventually moved to Pennsylvania, where he purchased and developed even more land. With plenty of timber and a protected harbor on Lake Ontario, Sackett's Harbor had long established a strong shipbuilding industry. The attributes that enticed Augustus Sackett and other settlers to the harbor were the very same that brought conflict to its shores, namely the War of 1812.
The USS Oneida was here, and the crew and the troops were to manage the embargo, which was here along the border with British-held Canadian side. So in Sackett's Harbor, they already knew that this was the best natural port on Lake Ontario on the American side. Therefore, Sackett's Harbor became the headquarters for the Army, the Navy, and the Marines.
Two battles were fought at Sackett's Harbor. The second and more significant battle occurred in 1813. In an attempt to destroy the American shipyard, a British-Canadian force launched an attack on May 29th. At that time, most American forces were across Lake Ontario attacking Fort George. The British saw an opportunity to take control of the harbor and swooped in. The historic battle lasted only 3 hours.
At that time, most of the troops were in the Niagara frontier. The British commanders realized and understood that the community of Sackett's Harbor was not well defended. They felt this was a good time to come over and capture Sackett's Harbor.
The remaining Americans drove off the enemy, but their narrow victory was marred by a fire that destroyed their military stores. During the remainder of the war, Sackett's Harbor was an active station where naval ships were constructed and supplied. This included an American warship known as the USS Superior. It was nearly finished, save a massive hemp cable that would be crafted into her rigging and anchor ropes. But with the British controlling the waters, there was no way it could be delivered by ship. It would have to be delivered by hand. Made in the shipyards of Boston, the giant cable stretched nearly 600 feet, measured 21 inches around, and weighed almost 5 tons. Unable to reach the harbor by water, the Americans landed their supply in Ellisburg, New York, where they successfully ambushed the British in the pivotal Battle of Big Sandy on May 29th and 30th, 1814. After the battle, it was still too dangerous to return to the lake. The supplies, including the massive hemp rope, would have to be taken the remaining 20 miles by land to Sackett's Harbor. Far too large for any wagon, it was decided the only way to get the 5-ton cable to the harbor was to carry it. In a feat true to American spirit, local soldiers, farmers, and merchants banded together to help carry the rope in an event that would later become known as the Great Cable Carry. In 2014, on the 200th anniversary, North Country volunteers reenacted the event, carrying a less heavy version of the rope along the same trail used 2 centuries ago.
By carrying the cable in the cannon after the Battle of Big Sandy, now we had the biggest ship on the lake. Now we had superiority. We had the largest ship, and that meant that no longer could the British freewheel on the lake. And so we now had control of the lake. They went back to Kingston and stayed for the rest of the war. It was something that was necessary for us to win the war. We had to have that superiority.
In December of 1814, the Treaty of Ghent officially ended the War of 1812, and the Lake Ontario fleet was placed in storage at Shiphouse Point. These significant events in Sackett's Harbor are part of what led to the eventual establishment of what is now known as Fort Drum.
The historic piece you just watched comes from an original 4-part documentary series called Discovering Jefferson County. The series was produced right here at WPBS. If you'd like the entire series at your fingertips, you can order your own copy and enjoy all 4 parts in the comfort of your own home.